Greetings, fellow travelers. Welcome to the 38th level of the RPG Cave. I'm one of your hosts, the level 99 human archmage, Ryan Turford, and I'm joined, as always, by the level 99 elf medic, Mr. Garret Bland. Garret, how are you doing this lovely, lovely evening, even though we may or may not have had a few technical troubles before we got started?
Oh boy, it took a while to get here. Oh my goodness. It was just, my laptop just messed up. It just farted out and it's like, I don't want to allow access to all your camera.
We don't know because we don't know what's going to happen yet. There's a possibility that you're not even seeing us right now, but I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there anyways. What's your beverage of choice right now, Garret? Because you actually brought a beverage this week. You didn't go.
It is carbonated water. It is a seltzer. We have our own soda stream and it's pretty good. I do like carbonated beverage every now and then.
It's very fancy, very fancy. Well, I've just got normal water. I've got my Predator pint glass here. It's very exciting. But anyways, this is the RPG Cave, not the drink cast where we talk about RPGs all the time, except for right now. So let's clear the dungeon of some pesky mobs and do some housekeeping. So first off, if you want to support the show, there's a number of awesome ways to do that. Number one, you can subscribe to us on your podcast feed of choice. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify. We're all places you find podcasts. We're apparently on Amazon Prime Music apparently as well. So you can check us out where podcasts are downloaded. Also, we have an Apple Podcast review to read on the show today, Garret. I'm very excited about this. We haven't had one of these in a long while. So this comes to us from Jose Jimenez over on Apple Podcasts. And the title of his review is "Attention RPG Lovers!" ! This is a must listen to for any RPG fan. All RPGs, Ryan and Garret are so knowledgeable and passionate about RPGs. They're not just about fanning out about a game, but giving you some education on it as well. That's my favorite. Thank you for the weekly dose of RPG love. And he puts it a little hard at the end. So thank you so much, Jose, for taking the time to writing a review like this, for giving us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. And yeah, stuff like that helps the show grow and get discovered as well. And if you would like to have your Apple Podcast review read on the show, just leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It's as simple as that. And we will get to it. Although I will say, he left his a few months ago, and it's just one of those things where it was on the American Apple Podcasts, which here in Canada, if I go to Apple Podcasts and look for our show, it only shows the Canadian listens.
Ones. Oh, yeah. They like to segregate between Canadians and American.
Well, they do that for every
United
region.
States. Yeah.
They do that for every region. So it's like, if someone leaves us an Apple Podcast review in like New Zealand, for example, we'd have to go to the New Zealand version of Apple Podcasts.
We got to connect the VPNs and everything, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, it's more like just playing around with the address line. But
do you put like .z or whatever?
I think it's probably like NZ is probably what you put there. And yes, I'm Canadian. I say Z instead of Z. Okay. That's just how that says. But also, if you want to support the show, there's other ways to do that. Of course, if you're watching us on YouTube right now, you might actually see video with us or you might not, but usually this is a video show. But of course, subscribe, share the video with your friends. Of course, ding, 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 ring that bell. Ding. That's what people tell you to do. Get those notifications. And then last but not least, if you want early access to this and all of our shows, head over to Patreon, patreon.com/Yumi Capri is how you do that. This week, Sean and I actually recorded an episode of the Yumi Capri podcast, which was actually pretty special because we may or may not have had this cool announcement that we announced in there that you might have to look forward to. So if you want early access to that and kind of find out more about that, go listen to that episode. But anyways, Garret, it's time to read from the sacred texts because we actually came up with a cool idea for this show because I actually love this idea a lot.
Me too.
RPGs kind of have this reputation to them where they're kind of like getting into RPGs is kind of like an expensive hobby where, you're not always able to games cost a lot of money as is, but for some reason or another, especially if you're a retro collector, RPGs are pretty expensive. So we wanted to dispel this myth at least a little bit. So what Garret and I actually decided to do is we each basically put together our own list. Basically, we gave ourselves $100 at the time of this recording, which is on March the 7th, 2022. If you're listening to this, well into the future. And we're going to go through and let you know how many games we were able to buy for $100. It didn't matter what platform. Also, if a game was on sale at the time of recording, we did consider it. And the reason why is because games, if a game's on sale now, it will be on sale in the future, probably for the same price, if not cheaper. So
very much so.
Not only that, but it's just harder for us to pull prices for games that are like the normal prices for games if they're currently on sale. So we just figured we'd do it this way. If it was a retro game, we pulled the price from pricecharting.com, which is a website that I actually really trust when it comes to retro prices as well. And they have prices for pretty much every console imaginable. And kind of you can compare. They basically do like an average across like eBay sold listings as well as a bunch of other marketplaces and kind of curate all the prices that way. So I definitely have some retro games, and I'm going to be bringing those up from Price Charting. So if you want to kind of find out where I got those numbers from, that is how. But Garrett, you came up with about 8 games, and I came up with about 11 games. So normally I would tell you to go first because I've talked for quite a while, but I'm going to go first on this one because I kind of want to knock through kind of my first like 3 games because they're all retro games, and then we'll be on even playing field at that point. So
sounds good.
My very first game on my list cost $9.71 according to PriceCharting.com. It is Dragon Warrior on the NES, aka Dragon Quest 1 on the NES. I mean, obviously, we had to put the grandfather of JRPGs on this list somewhere. And there's actually a cool story behind this. So back in the day, back in the 80s, Enix at the time, this was before Enix had joined Square Enix. They actually were really trying to get this series popular in the West because it was really popular in Japan, and they wanted to find like a really cool way to do that. So Nintendo Power was actually like a Nintendo's official magazine at the time. And what they did was everyone who was subscribed to Nintendo Power received a free copy of Dragon Quest, basically as a gift for being a Nintendo Power subscriber. So there's a gajillion copies of this game floating around because normally, again, most RPGs on the NES, like Final Fantasy, like Dragon Quest 2 through 4, are pretty expensive, especially like the other Dragon Quest games. But Dragon Quest 1 is very, very cheap because, again, there were just so many of them that flooded the market.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
and that's why the price is still so low.
Yeah.
Like below $10. That's
and the crazy thing about this, Garrett, is that the Dragon Quest 1 actually got a re-release on the Switch because they did like kind of like this remaster of it.
Yes, they did. Yeah.
But it's cheaper to buy the NES cartridge of Dragon Quest than it is to buy it on Switch. So
I would have thunk.
At this point, I'm like, yeah, I got to throw this on there because, again, it's such a cool story, but also, too, it's a really good RPG on the NES. So I had to put Dragon Warrior, as known here in North America, but Dragon Quest on the Famicom here on this list. But then, moving on, I also had to put a Super Nintendo game on this list. And I kind of wanted to prioritize games that didn't get re-releases of some kind, like HD re-releases. And this is actually one of my more expensive titles, but I wanted to highlight this one because it's actually one of the cheaper Super Nintendo RPGs, and it's actually fairly cheap. And I think it's actually a fun game, although you might laugh at me in just a second when I tell you what it is, Garrett. It is Final Fantasy Mystic Quest on the Super Nintendo. So
sounds good.
For those that don't know Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, it was essentially at first a North American exclusive Final Fantasy game. And it was basically meant to be like a super casual North American introduction to Final Fantasy. So the game itself is pretty easy. You basically go from town to town with your main character. And then basically as you go to each town, you get a new party member. And then that new party member is a different, Final Fantasy class essentially. And the battles play the same as, battles from Final Fantasy 4 through 6. So it's actually like a really fun game, even though it's on the easier side. I think this is actually a good pickup and a Final Fantasy game that has never gotten a re-release from the Super Nintendo. Not only that, but the battle music in this game is amazing. It's one of the best battle themes on the Super Nintendo, I would argue, for any RPG. So I actually think it's a surprisingly fun game. At $17.39 was the price for it. I had for it. So
$17. Okay.
In fact, no, hold on. It is my most expensive game because I realized that one of the prices for my games later on changed to go a little bit lower than that. And then my last game before I go to you, Garrett, because again, we'll have each at that point, is an original Xbox game, but it also came out on the PlayStation 2 and the GameCube. So it's available on all three platforms, but the original Xbox version is not only the cheapest version of this game, but it's also the best version of this game because the original Xbox version plays in 720p, versus the PlayStation 2 or the GameCube, which plays the game at 480i, essentially. And this game is X-Men Legends 2 Rise of Apocalypse.
I've heard of this game.
This game is $9.50. It's essentially X-Men, like an X-Men game, but in the style of Diablo. So it's an action RPG. It's top down. You have 4 party members. But what was cool about this version of X-Men Legends versus the original game is you also had a lot of the villains as well. So you could play as Magneto, Blob, Toad, Pyro, Mystique, as well as all the X-Men as well. They're coming together to take down Apocalypse. So this game is really fun, especially if you got 4 players to do local co-op for this game. Like, it's really fun. It also had online at play, but obviously, servers aren't up for it anymore. But this is another one that, again, just never got a re-release because of licensing. And I think it's a super fun and underrated game. And again, $9.50. Pretty good price for this as well. Good. So yeah, those are my first three games, Garrett. So start me off with your list. What do you got?
Mm-hmm. Well, before I get into it, I was thinking with this list is actually just like, I'm thinking of a consumer that wants to get into RPGs, but I think really the issue is that there's so many. And there's so like a lot of them can be cheap. They can be pretty cheap now more than ever. But we really want to highlight the RPGs that you can get on a budget that's going to be well worth your time. I think you had a very strong start with all those retro games. So if you guys have any of those consoles or whatever, go grab them at those prices because they're probably only going up from here on out. So I actually kind of look more on the current side of things. So I'm looking at PC, I'm looking at PlayStation and Xbox and Switch. And I have a 3DS game in there, but I was trying to look at a regular consumer going into it. Is like, what can you buy now? What's your current console? And go for it. Of course, my first game, and probably I was like, this is my go-to requirement for any RPG person. And as the Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim. Yes. And there's so many additions to this game. What I recommend is the special edition on PC is probably the best bet to go, best price. And this is a site that I go to quite a bit. If you want PC deals, you can go to stuff like Green Man Gaming. You can go to Fanatical Bundle. You got Humble. There's so many different third-party websites, and then there's also CD Keys. All of these websites, they're trustworthy. I've bought games from them. I've gotten codes. G2A, don't use that at all. I heard it's kind of weird.
I can attest to that as someone who's actually bought something from G2A before, like years and years ago.
Yeah. Don't do it. So I got Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim on the price that was today of $16.59 from CD Keys. And of course, you'll probably see Elder Scrolls Special Edition on sale quite a bit. There is an Anniversary Edition. Don't get that because you're not be allowed to mod anything in your game with that Anniversary Edition. Just get the Special Edition. It has all the DLC. And it pretty much, you're going to get, hundreds of hours of gameplay, and then you got mods on top of that. So I think that's a pretty good price for what you're getting.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's actually a really good package, especially because when it came out too, that was like a full price release, and it goes on sale all the time too. So the price has been pretty low on that. And even if you don't get it on PC, like, it's pretty cheap on consoles, and it's on Game Pass. So you have like a myriad of options to play it. And if you don't want to go with the special edition, if you want to go with the OG version, this actually almost made my list, Garrett, but I figured you'd probably pick Skyrim. The Xbox 360 version of Skyrim is the cheapest RPG available on the Xbox 360 at $5.94. If you want to pick up a copy of the original version. So there's even that option too. Like, there's a lot of great options to experience Skyrim. Obviously though, take Garrett's advice, pay the extra $10 and get the special edition, because I think it's definitely worth it. You'll want that DLC.
Special edition and PC for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, next up, Garrett, I cheated a little bit with my next one. And it was actually for a while my most expensive game, but luckily this evening it went on sale on Xbox, so I could actually claim a lower price on this one because then I could sneak in some more games. So
of course you did.
This one's a collection.
Okay.
It's a collection that's not even all RPGs. In fact, there's lots of games in this collection that aren't RPGs, but this collection is worth the price of admission alone for the RPGs that are in this collection. And that is the Sega Genesis Classics Collection. This is available on pretty much every platform under the sun: PC, Switch, Xbox, PlayStation. Currently, right now, the lowest price is on Xbox for $15 US. It comes with 50 games, 50 games. It's a lot of Genesis games. But the main reason why I wanted to include it on this list, even though, again, the Genesis, for most people, isn't really known as a RPG console, and this collection kind of reflects that a little bit, but there's about 9 or 10 RPGs in here, and there's some really solid ones, including all 3 Phantasy Star games that were on the Genesis. The only one that is missing is Phantasy Star 1, which was on the Master System, which was in a different Genesis collection, but that was on 360, and I didn't want to go that far back with a collection like this, because like you, I wanted to throw in some modern games as well that are on current platforms. But it also includes the 2 Shining Force games that I talked about in the Shining Force episode, which are 2 of my favorite strategy role-playing games of all time. You've also got Shining in the Darkness, which is the first-person RPG that was in that same universe, and all 3 of those games are made by Camelot, so you know they're good. And as well, you've got stuff like Light Stalker, which is an action RPG, as well as a couple other ones in there. So yeah, I think it's worth it for that price alone. Don't get me wrong. I think there's a possibility that some of these end up on Switch Online eventually, but we're RPGing on a budget, Garrett. That's the expansion pass. The expansion pass is expensive. So
it's pretty expensive.
It's just way cheaper to buy this collection. Even if you buy it at full price on Switch, which is $25.95, it's still worth it for the amount of games you get, and even just for those RPGs alone, because if you want a copy of Phantasy Star 4 cartridge only, that's $200 right now.
Don't do that.
If you just want that. So just get this collection. All these games play great, and it's got some of the best
save states in this.
Oh yeah. Save states, plus all the games had built-in saves too, because they're RPGs. But you can save in the middle of battles in Shining Force, which is awesome. So yeah, I think that this is a really solid collection if you don't have it already. If you've never played some of the Sega Genesis RPGs, trust me, they're worth it. They're actually really good. So there you go. That's my next pick.
That is a strong one for sure. I didn't even think about a collection like that, but yeah, all the RPGs that you listed out and your favorite games out there too. That's pretty good. All right. My next one is another kind of like, oh my gosh, this is such a Garrett pick. And I'm like, but guys, it's like cheap now. And it's like, you get so much out of it. I'm still continuing rolling on the Western RPG genre here. And of course, this is my second pick only from CD Keys on PC, and I chose The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt Game of the Year Edition, and this one actually goes on sale quite a bit too, on Xbox and PlayStation, like almost like probably once every 3 months. You see it go down.
I think it's actually even more than that if we had to guess.
It could be $15 to $20 easily. On CD Keys right now, it's $19.29. The DRM is GOG, but I argue a GOG is probably a better route to go if you want to do cross progression with your Switch, because it does have that cloud save cross progression with that, which is super neat. I don't know what else to say. I've spoken a lot about Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. It is probably one of my favorite RPGs of all time. You're going to get so much out of the base game and also the DLC in here. I feel like that's one of my favorite expansion DLC types of all time, Blood and Wine. And I don't know, man, like this is like, you can't beat this deal. I was like, when I saw that, I'm like, all right, putting it on here, it's going to be another like 200 to 300 hour at least adventure for someone to get into the Witcher world. And I think this is, if you want to get into the Witcher, this is the way to go, is this Game of the Year edition on whatever system of your choice, except for Switch. Don't try Switch. Do the other consoles or PC.
It's also so much more expensive on Switch. Like
it is more expensive on Switch.
as much. Yeah.
It does not. I think it went down as low as like 40 or 35 on Switch or something like that. But it's a blurry mess.
That's like half our budget, Garrett. We can't go that high on a game like that.
We can't go high on a game like that. So there you go. Witcher 3 Wild Hunt Game of the Year edition on GOG PC, $19.29.
Nice. That's a good pick. And plus, again, if you want to know our full thoughts on Witcher 3, we did an entire episode about it.
Yeah.
In the early episodes of the RPG Cave. So go back and listen to that. Now, Garrett, my next pick is actually the only one I think there's a possibility that is on both of our lists, because this is too good of a deal to pass up, and it's on the PlayStation 4 digital store on sale right now for $4.99. Dragon's Crown Pro.
It's on my list too.
Yeah, I kind of figured. So we're going to talk about this one a little bit. Obviously, we talked about it back on the Vanillaware episode. It's an action RPG. It plays similarly to the old Dungeons and Dragons arcade games, where it's more of a beat 'em up with RPG elements, and it's just a really fantastic game. Great local multiplayer. So if you've got a couple people around the house with extra controllers, you can play that way. But you can also play it online, and the online play for it is really fun as well. And it's just a really fun game. The story is kind of lacking, but the gameplay is so fun. And for the price of $5, like you'd be silly not to buy this at this point.
That's a pretty good price for a Vanillaware game. That's Dragon's Crown Pro, man. That's the way to go too. On the PlayStation, it plays really well, and on PS4 Pro and PS5 is pretty 4K. I really enjoyed what I played of Dragon's Crown. It's a great looter type of go out and adventure, get all your loot and everything, and then come back and repeat. It's that grind like Monster Hunter or whatever. But it's in 2D, and it's Vanillaware, and it's very stylish and all that sorts of stuff. So yeah, man, $5 for Dragon's Crown Pro. That's like a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's an easy slam dunk. It's like, come on, man. Like even not only that, but it goes on sale all the time too. Even physical copies too. I couldn't find one for less than $10 for physical when I was looking in preparation for this, but a lot of times, like, I've seen it below $10 for a physical copy too. So
that's pretty nice.
You're pretty good on both realms. Yeah. Well, since that was on both of our lists, I'll go again, and then we'll go back to you guys.
For sure.
Since we both talked about
Sounds
that one.
good.
My next one is also on sale currently on PlayStation Store. And also the main reason why I picked Dragon's Crown and this one as well is they're on sale, and they'll still be on sale when this episode goes up, because they'll be on sale, I think, till the 17th. So if you like what we hear about, what we say about these two, you can go grab them right now, because the price will still be there when you listen to this. My other one is Tales of Berseria on PlayStation 4. $9.99 for this one. So there's actually a couple Tales games that are currently on sale at the time we're recording this that again have the same, end date for the sale, because there's also Tales of Vesperia Definitive Edition as well, which is a really good game. I think Tales of Zestiria I think is also on sale. And they're all the same price. They're all $10. But Berseria is my definite pick. Number one, if you're new to Tales, but number two, if you've like the Tales games and for some reason you've never played Berseria, it's one of the best games in the series. It was basically developed for PlayStation 3 and then was ported to PlayStation 4 for the North American release, but it's a really solid action RPG where you play as Velvet Crow, who basically goes through this really traumatic experience and basically breaks out of prison. You're basically like playing as the bad guys in this game, so it's got like this like dark story to it. It was really interesting and intriguing. We don't often see like JRPGs that do like really good revenge stories well, but this one did. It totally nailed it, and it was awesome. It still has these amazing cinematics from UFO Table like the other Tales games do, and between the combat, the story, the characters, like everything about this game's awesome. So if you've never played Tales of Berseria and you're like on the fence about should I really pay full price for Tales of Arise right now, maybe this is how you get your Tales introduction fix.
Yeah,
Tales of Berseria for $10.
It's also on my list. Tales of Berseria is like a slam dunk, $10. And I mean, like I'm not much of a big Tales fan, but this is like, if you're not going to get Tales of Arise, this is the game to get, and it's the most accessible one. I played quite a bit of it. I played like maybe 15 hours of it, and I still need to go back to it. I really enjoyed of what I played of it. And I like the story so far. It really, like, in the beginning, it's kind of crazy. Everything just how it shakes out, and you kind of just going on an adventure with your characters. It's pretty cool. Very stylized. I love the voice acting in this as well, quite a bit.
Yeah,
so,
for sure. Especially even the English voice acting is really good in this game too. So, like both the English and Japanese options are great. So definitely check that out. Well, I wasn't expecting that. I because I knew it was a Tales game, so I was like, I didn't know Garrett was going to jump on it. So I'll get one here from my list that I know you don't have this one, Garrett.
Okay.
This is a Xbox 360 RPG from Obsidian. And it's not South Park. It is Alpha Protocol.
Alpha Protocol. Okay.
Alpha Protocol is actually very similar to a game like Mass Effect, where it's a dialogue-driven action RPG, but it's all about espionage. So it's all about spies and stuff like that. So it takes place kind of in this like near futuristic setting. And it's got like this really cool like sci-fi, like spy story, which is again, not something we usually see in RPGs, let alone in most modern games today. Cause I mean, the days of us getting, James Bond games every year are kind of out the window. So this is actually like a really solid game that I think it's awesome. So Alpha Protocol is a game that I think just a lot of people missed on the Xbox 360, but I think it's actually a really good pick. Unfortunately, it's not backwards compatible, so you will need a 360 to play it. But I think it's a game that's kind of like too good to ignore for retro collectors, and I think the price is only going to go up on this one, and I think it's really solid. So I highly recommend you check out Alpha Protocol if you've never checked it out before. Again, even $10. It's not $99. It's $9.99. It's just $10 flat. So
that's interesting. Cool. No, that sounds good. All right. For my next game. And I think Ryan might be surprised by this, and it's by far my most expensive one on the list. But I had to get a 3DS game in here. And I wanted to at least get a Fire Emblem game in here. And this is how we're going to do it. I went to yourpricecharting.com type of deal. I was like, all right, let's see. Just ballpark it. What is the price on this one? And I'm like, oh, that is actually affordable. And I would, even though it's a little high, I would keep it in this $100 budget. And that's Fire Emblem Awakening. And it's going on eBay, pre-owned, physically, for $28.99.
Yeah. Is that a loose copy or a complete in box?
That is a loose copy. So... Okay. Yeah, I don't care much about the physical side, whether it's the packaging or whatever. As long as the game is there, I think you'll do pretty well. So Fire Emblem Awakening, we've talked about quite a bit on our 3DS episode just previously, a couple episodes ago. My favorite Fire Emblem game for sure, and I think you'll get a lot of time out of this one. It's my favorite, probably tactics RPG type of mechanic. I love the story of Fire Emblem. There's a lot of repeatability too with the matchmaking and making like new characters and new kids or whatnot. So you can actually probably play this 2, maybe 3 more times to get a lot of playtime out of it. And that's why I recommend getting this, even though it's such a high price at $28.99. I think that really blocked my budget, but I had to go for it. I had to go on eBay, and
well, it's still way cheaper than getting the digital copy, because the digital copy is like $50.
Yeah, the digital copy is super expensive still, and yeah, I would just get a physical at this point. If it's that much loose on eBay, it's like I would try it out. I don't know. What do you think, Ryan? Is that an okay price for that game?
It definitely is. I will say the one caveat I'm going to throw out there is that you have to be careful with 3DS and DS games specifically on eBay, because counterfeits are out there and very prevalent at this point. Okay. Like there's some obvious ones, because if you see that it's shipping from China, you pretty much know it's going to be a bootleg copy. But for the most part, like it's harder to tell with a game like that unless you're buying it at a convention or a local game store or something like that. But for the most part, I think that's a good price, and it doesn't sound like it's a bootleg copy at that price.
No, it's from Las Vegas, Nevada. It's pre-owned, and then if you want it brand new, it's $43. Like it's not much of a price difference, really. Like I just chose the pre-owned there. So yeah, I think that's a
I think it's pretty good. I think you did well with that one. I mean, yeah, we had to have something like that. I just shouldn't put any 3DS games on my list because they're becoming too expensive.
They're becoming so expensive right now.
And we didn't have that Shin Megami Tensei sale to kind of line up with us making this list. So if only, because we probably would put this on there. Well, I'm glad that you put the 3DS stuff on there, Garrett, because my last 3 picks all have a theme to them. And that theme is the PlayStation 3 and Vita store. Is kind of going to fill out the remaining list, where essentially either the games I have left are either going to be playable on PS3 or playable on PlayStation Vita, essentially, because those stores I still think they're probably going to close in the next year, just like the Wii U and 3DS stores. So I kind of want to talk about some of these now. Maybe I after doing this exercise as well, I kind of want to do, because like after doing this exercise, Garrett, I remembered just how good and how cheap that store is at this point for so many amazing games on it. Nice. That I almost kind of want to do kind of its own list down the road of like what how many games can you get on the PSN, PS3 and Vita stores essentially that are
before
RPGs
they go away forever.
Yeah, exactly. So my first of all, there's lots of Persona games on the store that I could have chosen from. For example, Persona 5, very cheap right now on PlayStation 4 if you want to pick that up, but it's also part of the PlayStation Plus collection on PlayStation 5, so that's not fun. Persona 4, it's already on the Vita. You can get it there. I don't want to include that one, because the one I wanted to include was Persona 3 FES, the PS2 Classic Edition, which is available digitally on PlayStation 3 for $9.99. So this is basically just the PS2 version of Persona 3 FES, which I think is amazing, because the FES version, I talked about it back on the Persona episode, but it's essentially the golden version of Persona 3, where they added kind of like an epilogue to the game to basically talk about what happens with the characters after the game's over. Plus, there's a whole bunch of new animated cinematics, and as well as some new bosses and some new equipment that you get throughout the game. And I love Persona 3. It's actually my favorite Persona game. We've never seen it come to other consoles besides the PSP or the PS3 at this point, besides the PlayStation 2. So I think this is worth it. Again, the physical copy of this game is starting to go up in price. It's starting to approach the $50 mark if you want, a loose disc. So you can't beat $10 before the PlayStation 3 store closes. Plus, again, there's also still the possibility that this game comes to PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4 down the road, because we do have a lot of the PlayStation 2 classics that are available on the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, like Siren and a bunch of other games. But for some reason, they didn't do that with the Persona games. But I think there's a possibility they do that.
Because Atlas is so weird. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Because they also have like the Devil Summoner games on PlayStation 3. And those games are like $300 if you want to copy it, or they're $10 on the store. So it's like, it's kind of a no-brainer for this one. So again, Persona 3, probably my favorite Persona game, and $10, you can't beat that. So there you go.
Nice. Well, I'll keep this Persona train rolling. You mentioned it, and I definitely put it on my list. And I put Persona 5 for sure for $8.99, $1 less than your Persona 3 FES. Unplayable on PlayStation 4, and it's on PlayStation 3 as well. I just don't think there's a sale for that particular.
Yeah, that one, I don't think it's ever gone on sale for that console. So
yeah, exactly. I would just get it on PlayStation 4. And I mean, there's really no words to say. Persona 5, probably, Persona 3 FES. I'm glad you mentioned it. I'm glad you recommended it, because I wouldn't know. That game was so cheap on the PS3 store. But Persona 5, I think, is probably, again, the most accessible Persona game there is. The later games are always well, and so you can always start with Persona 5. I love the cast of characters. I played the regular edition too. I know Royals probably ironed out a little kinks here and there, but Persona 5, the original, was still really, really good. And I had so much fun with it. You still get over 100 hours of gameplay of good JRPG-ness. So yeah, I definitely wholeheartedly recommend Persona 5. You can play on PlayStation 4 or 5 and you can get it for $9. Of course, it's in the the PlayStation Plus collection. So if you have a PS5, go play it right now. Maybe a PlayStation 4. Well, there you go. $9 for for Persona 5.
I mean, the main takeaway is just play Persona 5 because it's amazing.
Just do it.
If you're listening to this show, you should play that game. It's awesome. We both really recommend it. So
definitely.
Yeah, definitely check that one out. All right, my next one, another PlayStation 2 classic on PS3. And this one's actually much more expensive in real life if you want a copy of this. But on the store, it's actually cheaper than Persona 3. And this one is Growlancer Heritage of War. So this is a PlayStation 2.
What did you just say?
Classic of War. So Growlancer is actually an offshoot of another series called not Landstalker. It's something else. It's called something else, but it's on Switch now. But basically, it's a strategy RPG series that started back on the Genesis. But Growlancer was basically a spin-off of that, where it was a like a real-time strategy game, but then when battles commenced, you then went into turn-based battles. It kind of reminds me of, did you ever play any of the Ogre Tactics games, Garrett?
I have not played the Ogre Tactics games, but I know what you're talking about. I played some games like it's real-time strategy, and then once you like face off, it's like you go into turn-based type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's essentially how this game plays out. It's a lot of fun. This game is like very expensive if you want the real life copy, but it's $7.99 on the PlayStation 3 store.
That's pretty good.
It's a really solid game. I think it's actually one of the best PlayStation 2 RPGs. And it's a lot of fun, and you can't beat that price. I think it's actually really solid. The downside is, of course, you have to play it on PlayStation 3 in case you don't feel like busting out that console. But those consoles are actually pretty cheap nowadays, which is why I also wanted to highlight some PlayStation 3 stuff, because this is, if you ever wanted to get into PlayStation 3, like now is the time to do it. Because in 5 years from now, like all that stuff's going to get scooped up and it's going to become more expensive. So
get your George Foreman grill. Basically.
Get your George Foreman grill right now and get Growlancer Heritage of War on the console. It's another Atlas game as well, Garrett, because that's just kind of the running theme on here. But it's really solid. I definitely recommend checking it out.
Cool. All right, I'll keep. I know I keep going back to the PlayStation sales, but I think this game goes on sale like everywhere, all the time, and even on Switch it gets pretty cheap. And that is Dragon's Dogma Dark Horizon. It is on the PlayStation 4 right now for $9. So this is a kind of a Western RPG take from Capcom, and it's a very well executed one. If at that, it kind of takes on like that Skyrim Western world exploration, but more story driven. I think the combat is much better. You can see or feel the Monster Hunter type of combat going on, where you can like literally crawl up monsters and beasts and like cut them open, and then you have different types of classes as any other, and the lore is very deep. And what I love about it is it's a very dark take on a Western RPG. Very more surreal than anything else. It plays great on Switch as well. It's actually a really good Switch port from PS3 and 360. So yeah, I definitely recommend Dragon's Dogma, Dark Horizon. You'll get a lot of time out of there as well. As you can tell, this is like it's mostly the Western RPG bundle. And some JRPGs like kind of sprinkled.
I was just going to say, you went up more of the Western side, and then I went up with all the JRPGs basically at this point. But that's actually a good pick as well. I know that's like a cult classic game, because I know it didn't really sell super well, but people who love that game love that game.
It's pretty good.
And I've just still never played it at this point, just because I never really got vibes that it's the type of game that I personally would be super into. But I'm glad you put it on your list, Garrett, because I know that's one that a lot of people really recommend. Also, going back to when I was talking about Growlancer, Landgresser is the series I was talking about.
Landgresser, yes, that's on Switch.
And those games are on Switch. So Landgresser 1 and 2, they did a collection of those from the older games. So
they're still expensive, so don't,
yeah, exactly. But you can get Growlancer, the spinoff, for really cheap. But my last one of my, I had to throw a PlayStation 1 RPG on here because it's Ryan Turford and you just expect that. And one of the things about PlayStation 1 RPGs in particular, they're very cheap. They all run on the PlayStation Vita and they all look great on the PlayStation Vita. So I had to include one. Shout out to my boy, the PlayStation Vita. And that is The Legend of Dragoon. So it's a PlayStation 1 classic. It's available on PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 1 for $4.99. Garrett, this was a 4-disc game on the PlayStation 1. It's a long game. It's got a really great story. It's got like a really interesting combat, like turn-based combat dynamic where essentially your characters attack using combos. And essentially when your character runs up to attack the enemy, like a prompt will come up on the screen, almost like a quick time event. And you basically have to press the buttons in time with whatever combo your character is using. And some of them get really crazy towards the end of the game where you got like 12 or 13 hit combos and you're just bouncing all over the place, hitting enemies with stuff. But it's got like a really cool story and a great cast of characters. And I really love Legend of Dragoon. It's a game that I'm saving my talk about it because I have a feeling that down the road, I will be doing an episode of Legend of Dragoon at some point because I love that game. It's one of my favorite PlayStation 1 games. And I know it's a lot of people's favorite PlayStation 1 games as well. And one that I'm sad never came back. It's still to this day, never come back in a remake form or it got a sequel for a while that was being developed, but then it got canceled. So it's a series that from Sony first party that's never come back. Like Shuhei Yoshida worked on this game, Garrett. How cool is that? There you go. But Legend of Dragoon, $5, and it's on your PlayStation Vita. It looks great on your OLED display or your LED display. Yep. So there you go. That's my last pick.
Nice, man. That's a good set of games you got going there. I like how you went all around, like retro, handheld, and everything else. All right, my last one. If you guys were doing the math, I'm almost like over the budget. I'm just like $2 and like 20 cents left. And I was like, okay, what can I get so cheap? And it's an RPG and that's okay. And actually I haven't played this, but it's a new game. They just came out on Switch for $2, or it's on sale right now for $2. It's initially $12.99, and it's actually had pretty good reviews on iPhone and everything. I guess it's originally a mobile game. It's called Gym Wizards Tactics, and it looks like it's going to be on sale for quite a bit. So if you guys want to look it up, the gameplay, and try it out, it looks actually pretty dope. It's like one of those hexagon-like type of tile battlefields, and it kind of reminds me of just like chess in a way, where you got a certain amount of characters versus the opponent, and I don't know. I can't really explain this game that much because I just looked at it and it looked pretty cool, and it has some great reviews on iPhone. So there you go. You can get an RPG as low as $2, brand new,
That's
brand
awesome.
Spanking new, and it's on. But it is on sale right now. So if you want to grab it on Switch, I would get it now. It's $2 versus $13 down the road. So
I feel like all you've just done, Garrett, is you've fed into Console Kato and Sean Capri's like notorious habit of buying like $2 Switch games on the eShop and just going in there and finding every game that's 99 cents and buying it. So you've just given them another game to add to the list at this point.
It certainly helps them, man. I've seen a lot of indie studios do this on Switch. Like they'll debut and they'll put their game like so far down, like $1, $2, and you go to the daily deals on Switch or the anywhere like on the store, and you will see it at like number 4 or number 5 because it's so cheap, and it's like from like $30 or $40, and it's just like, why are you doing this? It's marketing. It's just the word of mouth. It's just people who are really going to get on the deals first and then tell their folks and friends how great this game is and you should get it now, or whatever. So I think it's a good marketing strategy. It seemed to pull off some success, and this one seems pretty cool. So I'm gonna probably definitely give it a go. And also,
you can't beat the price.
You can't beat the price right now. And again, it's on iPhone, and I don't know about Android, but it's mobile first, and I guess they just ported over to Switch. So there you go.
It's on all the places, so you can check it out. So Garrett, what was your final total? Mine was $99.54. So I saved 46 cents.
Okay.
That's enough to buy a Timbit.
There you go. $99. And I think I didn't sum it up, so I need to do the math here. Hold on. It's 82 cents. $99.82. I have 18
You got closer to the goal
left. Yes.
Yeah,
and probably with taxes and everything, it's going to be well over, but there you go.
Yeah, especially Ontario prices here, where we're Ontario taxes, we're paying like $18% on every purchase that we make.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's lovely. But there you go. So that's our list. And again, I think this is a really good exercise because, again, you don't need a lot of money to be an RPG gamer. There's still lots out there. Again, there's lots of games that were out there that we didn't even choose for this list that were really cheap, especially, again, if you've got specific consoles as well. Like I said, I think the PlayStation 4 or the PlayStation 3 are like gold mines for RPGs at this point, especially if you want to go digitally with the games that go on sale all the time on PlayStation 4 to all the classic games that are on PlayStation 3 store until they close it. Like, I think there's a lot of really good options for people out there. And I'm glad that we did this because I think we came up with a pretty good list of games. But before we go to questions real quick, I wanted to zoom through some other possibilities that are out there as well, because we don't really ever talk about free-to-play games on the show, Garrett, because they just don't come up that often. So I want to talk about real quick some of the free-to-play RPG options. Now, most of these admittedly are MMOs because that's just how this works. But I only wanted to include MMOs on here that had like a robust free-to-play system that felt like you were getting something out of it playing free-to-play. And one of the best examples of that just came out pretty recently, and it's Lost Ark from Amazon Games. We talked about this actually during our like beginning of the year episode because we were like, oh, Lost Ark, I don't really know too much about this game, but it's like one of the most popular games in the world right now.
I had no idea. It just came out of nowhere. Of course, every Twitch streamer is getting paid by Amazon to promote this, but it seems cool. It looks cool. So
yeah, I've played it a little bit, but unfortunately my PC is just not up to snuff to play it. But it's a game that looks like it really rewards players, and it doesn't really have it has microtransactions, but they don't really look like they're too predatory or anything like that. And it's essentially like a top-down, like isometric action RPG, similar to something like Diablo, but you've got like all of the commands and buttons that you normally would in a normal MMO. So it seems really interesting and cool, and I wish I could play more of it. And maybe I'll do that kind of when I upgrade my computer. But I think that's a good option. Another one that most people kind of forgot was still around. Star Wars: The Old Republic, which actually just got a new expansion.
That's crazy.
Maybe like 2 weeks ago. But this game, you can actually play the entire game for free, and it's essentially meant to be like Knights of the Old Republic 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Because it's got like a whole bunch of different stories and content. And it's essentially just a BioWare RPG that's free to play and in the Star Wars universe and is an MMO. But otherwise, it's very story heavy. You have a bunch of different choices, like all the BioWare games. You can romance party members. You can do all the stuff you'd normally do in other BioWare games. But you're playing with friends, and I think it's actually a pretty fun free to play game as well. That's not so bad. Next up, Destiny 2. Which again is more of a shooter than an RPG, admittedly, but it is still technically an RPG. You still got that loot grind. You still got all those skills and XP that you're getting in that game. But the free-to-play experience, admittedly, is not that great for it. You definitely need to buy some of the expansions to get a lot of the combat content. But there is still like a base story that you can follow with Destiny 2, and it's pretty good. Another one that I want to highlight, The Elder Scrolls Online. Basically the base game for the original version that came out years ago is what's free to play, and then if you want more stories on top of that, then you pay for them. Like you pay for the Morrowind expansion and all the other expansions as well for Elder Scrolls Online, and I think it's pretty good as well as free to play game. But there you go. Also, Final Fantasy XIV's free trial is very, very, very good. It's the full game and the first expansion. It's like 100 hours of story content for free.
So don't even buy anything. Like just do the free trial for now.
But at that point, yeah, you can get like 2 really great stories and just a ton of gameplay that'll just last you weeks for free. So that's a great get for free. Next up, Genshin Impact, which I know is really popular with our Discord and free to play. And Garrett, I know you also play.
It's really good. I mean, I haven't played it as much lately, but guys, try it out. Like, it's free to play. It's on like phone, PlayStation, and PC. And I think the PC and phone are interchangeable. It's like your own accounts. PlayStation's separate. But yeah, it plays really well on my PC and on my phone. So I could just take it on the go.
And there are some microtransactions, but I don't think they're that bad. For the most part.
It's a gacha game. So basically you buy like these packs if you want that can give you new companions, but you also can just grind to get the credits to get the packs. So it's good for like I played maybe I only played like 10 to 15 hours just to beat the main game, and it was just a solid experience. It's a very, very solid game. And of course, they'll try to get you to pay some stuff if you want, but it's not egregious or anything like that.
No. And it's got this whole end game, loop and everything else. So yeah, I think that's actually like a really good one. Next up, Path of Exile. This is a Diablo-like that's been around for years and years and years. I think this game's actually pretty fun as well, but I played it for a while and I kind of just fell off with it. Again, it doesn't have like a really good end game or anything like that, but I think the campaign's actually pretty solid for Path of Exile. If you want, something like Diablo and you don't want to pay for Diablo, then I think this is actually a good option. Cool. And then of course, Phantasy Star Online 2, which is another MMO that I really like, but it's a bit clunky.
Text heavy. Oh my goodness.
It's a very old school MMO, but I still think it's fun. And then the last one that Garret actually wanted to highlight was Dauntless as well. So I don't know anything about Dauntless, so tell me about it.
It's a Monster Hunter clone. That's all you need to know, basically.
There you go.
I heard I'm not too sure about the Monster Hunter fans that are really into it, but if you just want like a light game, hack and slash, I heard it's a pretty good free-to-play game. And it's on Switch as well and on PC. I think those are... It may be on consoles, but I'm not too certain. It's definitely on Switch and PC, though. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So before we go, Garret, we got some questions from the audience that we got to go through. So let's party up and let some of our friends into the raid with us. We're going to start with Hungry Pup at Gamer Hungry Pup on Twitter, who asked the question, when is full voice acting in RPGs a good thing and when is it not so welcome? Interested on what examples you guys come up with. So for full voice acting, first of all, I'm actually a big fan of full voice acting. Whenever I play an RPG, I always hope it's there. Even if it's English voice acting, and I know how some people feel about English voice acting in like stuff like JRPGs, but I personally really love voice acting in games. It really like immerses me in the experience and just takes away from a lot of the reading that you have to do, especially if a game is like super dialogue heavy. I love having full voice acting there. So I always think it's a net positive whenever it's there, even if it's terrible. I'll still usually find a way to enjoy it anyways and be more immersed because of it. And trust me, as someone who plays a lot of PS1 and PS2 era games, there is some real bad voice acting in some older games. But the one time I will say that it's not so welcome is in a situation where you have to replay a sequence and the voice acting isn't skippable in any way. Like if you have to sit through it again, like if you die at a boss or something like that, and you have to wade through like 5 minutes of voice acting that you've already heard 3 or 4 times because you've died 3 or 4 times to get back to where you were. Like that's what I don't like, but I'm interested to hear what you have to say about this, Garret.
I think this is a very good question with the full voice acting. I do enjoy voice acting when it's appropriate. I think it's not appropriate a lot of the time, and I personally mute or skip voices a lot of the time just because I just like to get the information like right in front of me. I like to be familiar with the voice for sure, like in a cutscene or like if you're doing like a kind of a more intimate conversation with characters, with your main character. That great. I would love voice acting in there. But when I'm having just like conversations with like companions, when I'm just pressing the X button or something, and then they just talk and talk and talk, and I'm like, oh, it feels like a slog to me. Like it's just like I just want the information, go in and get out. I like being immersive, and I do commend these developers actually getting voice acting in there, because there's some companies that don't do that. Hint, hint, Pokemon Company never will. That, you know, they put in the extra effort in there to really bring out the personality, and that's like including like smaller developers, and it was surprising to me, like a lot of Japanese developers really do seek out voice acting when it's appropriate. So yeah, it's that's basically my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that sentiment. I know that I really like it because again, I find it pulls me in, but I can see how it would be annoying as well if you just want the information, and especially if you can read faster than the voice acting is coming through. Yeah, I can totally get it from that perspective as well. But I don't know, when I like the reason I like the voice acting, it almost feels like I'm watching a show rather than I'm doing a whole bunch of reading. And it feels less like a visual novel that way. So I guess that's why I might feel a little bit differently about it. But I think that's an interesting point of view as well, Garret. But next up, Jose Jimenez on the Discordia asked the question, Rai and Dr. B, are either of you playing Triangle Strategy? And if so, what are your thoughts? Does it remind you of any other RPGs? So Garrett, I know famously you said on Shack this week that you weren't playing Triangle Strategy. Did you go back on this? Are you playing Triangle Strategy?
Guess what, Ryan? No, I'm not. Garrett? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, guys. No, I will not be playing Triangle Strategy anytime soon. I played the demo and I really enjoy it. It's so from the reviews, it's very dialogue heavy. It is a lot of dialogue in there. It probably more than Octopath Traveler. Talk about a game that has good voice acting. Triangle Strategy has some good English voice acting in there. And it actually brings out the characters a lot in there. So I really enjoyed that. Does it remind you of any other RPGs? I think we all know the spiritual kind of successor, right? Like predecessor of this and that's Final Fantasy Tactics. That kind of line, it's a pretty much a carbon copy. You got your different classes. It's a tactics RPG, a tile based. It's really heavy on elevation. Whereas like if you're higher in elevation, you get the better kind of advantage. Also placement, like basically you got to be very careful where to place your characters and how you're going to hit the other character on the sides or the back. Environmentally, what are you going to do? Are you going to put ice on there? Are you going to put water? It can be very elemental advantage. Environmentally, it can be pretty crazy too. You can burn buildings on fire. Burn
buildings on fire.
That's basically it. So yeah, no, it's play the demo. It's really good, and it's 5 hours. Like it's a good long demo to just.
Well, and again, if you actually are interested beyond the demo, like their save carries over, so you're ready to start playing from there. Whereas I also played the demo. I think it's awesome. I just haven't been out to get my copy yet. I'm actually going tomorrow because I have to go do some other stuff anyway. So I'm just going to be doing it while I'm out, and I'll be playing it tomorrow. So there you go. But I mean, I played the demo. I've got my save ready to go, and I'm ready to jump into some Triangle Strategy because again, I think the demo is awesome. So I can't wait for the full game. But yeah, if you're not into like heavy political intrigue stuff, like you're not going to be probably.
It's very heavy dialogue. Like over half of the demo is dialogue. So yeah, that'll get you a feel of what this game is.
I mean, that was why like there was a review that gave it like a 5 out of 10. It was because they didn't like the dialogue. So
it's not I can't believe that. Anyways, that's another topic.
That's a whole other thing. Anyways, TPR on the Discordia asked the question, I feel like the impact of RPG Maker on indie RPGs through Steam cannot be understated. Omori is a recent example of a hit that comes to mind. Have either of you dabbled with RPGs that were made using this tool? So I actually had to look up games that were made with RPG Maker because it's not always obvious to me anyways, which games are and which games aren't, besides of course, some certain UI tells and things like that. And honestly, TPR, I haven't played any RPG as far as I know of that was made using RPG Maker. And I think part of that too is I just don't play games on PC. But I mean, we've seen games with RPG Maker come to consoles. And one of them I have played is Corpse Party, which is actually a survival horror game.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a survival horror game that's basically almost like this pixelated, like it plays like an old RPG, but it's not an RPG because it doesn't have RPG elements. Again, it's like a survival horror game where you're trying to solve puzzles and not get killed by murderous ghosts in this like alternate dimension version of the school that you're in. It's a really cool game and I really enjoyed it, but it's definitely not an RPG. But it fits. It's the closest thing I've got to TPR's question. So Garrett, do you have any rebuttal to TPR's question?
Dude, I have not really gotten into any type of RPGs made by RPG Maker. I'm trying to look at, there's To the Moon. That's one of them. I haven't played any of these, and they're lesser known RPGs, and of course on PC. But yeah, no, I'm glad people are taking advantage of that tool set to create their own game. That I think like tool sets like that are really awesome for people who want to create games like Dreams, like Super Mario Maker. Like I applaud those developers actually creating an environment where they're able to make this type of stuff. And I I would like to try out these for sure. If they have great reviews and it's on sale or whatever, or if it's just like on a third-party website, I would definitely be down trying a few of them to see what's really the kind of extension of this RPG Maker toolset is. I've heard of this game through and through, like a lot of the time, like on DS and 3DS and now on Steam. It looks like it's quite popular now, all around. So yeah. Sorry, TPR. I have not played any.
Sorry, man. And actually, believe it or not, this wasn't the first time we got a question about this, because I think
that's true.
I think Mike Blaze Knight asked us a question about this like 3 months ago, and we had a similar response as well. But next up, West3DP at West3DP on Twitter asked the question: have you played Agelos on Switch? I grabbed it on an eShop sale and I had an awesome time with it. So while Garrett looks up this game, because I don't know if you, because I hadn't heard of this game before either. This is like a side-scrolling action RPG. It's basically looks like kind of like Shovel Knight. It's got an 8-bit style to it. It almost actually looks like Zelda 2. I think that's kind of the vibes I'm getting from this.
Yeah.
And with maybe without the like top-down overworld, maybe. It looks cool, West 3DP, but I honestly hadn't heard about this game until you told me in this question. But it looks cool. I think this might be one worth checking out.
I've heard of this. I've seen the cover of it. It reminded me at first, at least just the cover of it. Oh my gosh, I forget the Metroidvania that's in my head. They recently remade it where you could turn into other animals like frog and like
Shantae?
Not Shantae. It's another one. It's you're a boy and then you like. It's like a ball.
Oh yeah, Monster Boy
Monster Boy. No, it reminds me of that.
Wonder Boy and Monster World.
Wonder Boy. Yeah. Okay. No, I have not looked at this. I've seen it on sale though. I've recognized that cover, and I'm like, yep, that's another. Man, Switch has a lot of deals like going around. Like
there's also way too many games on Switch. Like I don't know if you knew this, Garrett, but Switch is like approaching like 8,000 games on the console.
That's kind of
like,
crazy.
Which is like leagues above every other console that's ever existed. So it's just like it's just silly. Like you can't keep up with all the Switch games.
It's just I
don't even know how you guys
now.
do that over on Shaq, Garrett. It's too much.
Yeah.
And last question of the week comes from us from Delroy on the Discord, who asks a question: do you feel most RPGs earn their often too long run times? As time has passed, the idea of a 40+ hour game is often daunting and an actual turnoff for me. I've come to love shorter RPGs like Cosmic Star Heroine and Chrono Trigger that can be sold a complete story. It could be a solid complete story without a ton of filler. And again, when something like when I hear a comment like this, it actually really reminds me of games like Persona 5, for example, because there are definite moments in Persona 5 where I felt like there was some drop off there where, you know, I keep going to like the Beeful restaurant and stuff like that, but it's like I can only do like some of this slice of life stuff for so long before it, you know, drives me batty, like especially towards like the 80th or 90th episode, like hours of that game. Like I can definitely understand the sentiment from, you know, the outside looking in. With that. Not only that, but I think we've talked about it on the show before. Where actually, I think when we talked about Cosmic Star Heroine, one of the things I really liked about it was the shorter runtime. And I do like RPGs that are like that. And I think there's a lot of retro RPGs out there. Like you'd be surprised how many of them are shorter. Like Shining Force 2, for example, one of the games I talked about when I was talking about the Sega Genesis collection. That's like a 15-hour game.
Oh, that's nice.
On the Genesis. So it's a really nice length. Not only that, but Fire Emblem as well is a game that sure, you can play for a ton of hours, but if you mainline it and then do enough grinding on the side to get through it, like it's probably like a 20-hour game at the most, I think. So, whereas when Delroy talks about 40+ hour games, I think they're less of the norm, unless of course you're talking about Western RPGs, you know, stuff like The Witcher or Skyrim and stuff like that. Like those are all super long. But Garrett, what do you think about this question?
It's a very good question. It really depends on what you mean by earn. Like it really depends on like what you enjoy, right? Like if you're into the grindiness and everything like that, then sure, like you're gonna be wanting to get into a meaty RPG that's could be longer than 40 hours. But yeah, I agree with that, right? RPGs that are shorter are refreshing, especially in the indie style. Like if you can make a complete story from beginning to end under like 20 hours, you did yourself pretty good on the RPG route. That's good pacing, I think. And I think it's one of the complaints that we get a lot with these JRPGs and Western RPGs that they're just too long. Witcher 3 is one of them that has a lot of fluff. I'm not going to lie. It has a lot of question marks on that map. You're going to need to go a lot of different places, and mainlining the story, you could probably finish it in 50 to 60 hours. Like it's not a short time at all. But I just love the world, right? I think that's what earns me a lot is the world and the exploration side of these Western RPGs. Like I really want to get into the side quests. I really want to get into this. I want to level up my characters. I want to craft. I want to, the same thing with your MMOs, right? Like you want to keep on progressing and just explore the world, basically. That's what earns
you get
my
invested
time.
in the world.
Again, you get invested in the world. I agree with Delroy though. Like, I think of Dragon Quest 11 and I hear a lot of people are like, it's a good game, but man, oh man, it drags like crazy. In Persona 5, I agree with you. It drags at the end there. It definitely doesn't really refresh or take a quick turnaround or anything like that. So that's just how it is. And I'm not going to tell you need to finish an RPG. I actually these days I rarely finish RPGs. I just like to give people the option of like, this is a good price. Even if you play for like 30 or 40 hours and have fun with it, then like that's good. Like I don't care if you finish or not, really.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, finishing it is one thing, but as long as you enjoyed it and you felt like you got the money out of it, then that's all that matters. Like I talked about it when on the Xbox Drive when playing Elden Ring, which is like an 80-hour game, but I played it for 30 hours in 4 days. And then I was like, you know what? I've kind of hit my point where I don't feel like I need to play any more of this. So I kind of put it down. And if I never go back to it, I never go back to it. Cause I felt like the 30 hours that I played was satisfying enough that it was worth the money I put into it. Cause I had a lot of fun playing that game. Yeah. And it was just the open world didn't hook me beyond that. Because it is so like abstract with its open world that you kind of have to, so much of that game is all about the fun of exploring stuff on your own. And if you don't have the motivation to continually do that for 80 hours, you're going to fall off at some point. But again, it was really fun up until that point. And then it's also weird looking back to your point, Garrett, about the Persona series in particular, because it was like with Persona 3 FES, you can beat that game in 25 hours. And then Persona 4 Golden, it takes about 40 hours to finish that, I think.
It's quite a bit,
And then Persona 5, it's like 100 hours plus, regardless of what version you play. So it's just like, it's gotten longer and longer and longer with each new entry. And I think you see that a lot with a lot of games, because again, they just want to add that value. But I don't think that's always the correct approach. Like I would love to see kind of a return to more condensed RPGs. But you know what, Delroy, if you're looking for more condensed RPGs, number one, a lot of the games I put on my budget list are games that are actually a lot shorter. But number two, explore like stuff on Game Boy Advance RPGs like Golden Sun, or go back to, other Super Nintendo RPGs or Genesis RPGs or
indie RPGs. Smaller ones.
Indie RPGs as well. Like I think especially go back and listen to our indie show, because I think a lot of those are shorter as well. Like stuff like Undertale, you can beat that in like 6 hours. So I think there's a lot of stuff out there that's available to you. But anyways, I think that's going to do it for our show, Garrett. But before we go, Garrett, plugs go.
You can follow me at Twitter at Blank Explosion, and I'm also co-host to the Nintendo Shack, part of the Play Some Video Games Podcast Network. We are live at twitch.tv/PSVG every Thursday nights, and that is it.
Very nice, my friend. As for me, you can find me on Twitter at Ryan Turford. You can find us on Twitter at Yumi Caprice, on YouTube at youtube.com/Yumi Capri, and on podcast services around the globe. So for Garrett Bland, I'm Ryan Turford. This has been level 38 of the RPG Cave, and we're out.
Bye-bye.
The RPG Cave's mana is powered by patrons over at patreon.com/Yumi Capri. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you to our over 70 patrons, starting with our premium producers, Dallas Ford, Jonathan Brown, the man behind the music on the Xbox Drive and the Nintendo Drive. You can check out his new album, In My Element, over on Apple Music, as well as his website, and Lee Navarro, the fearless leader of the Phoenix Overdrive Extra Life team. Our platinum producers, Robbie Bobby Miller and Trucker Sloth, and our gold members, Argo, Brandon Myers, Dallas Robbins, Dano, Emily O'Kelly, Foolish Fuji, Joel Brooks, Jose Jimenez, Mac Time, Marcus O'Neill, Mr. and Mrs. Nasty Boots, RJ Kern, Skinny Matt, Tony Baker, and Xavier Reyes. Thank you all for all of your support, and if you're interested in joining the Patreon, head over to patreon.com/YumiCapri and pick the tier that's right for you.